Well, communication, I think, has been one of the greatest problems, really. But we all have problems in communicating. We can also make assumptions. The other day, for instance, I went into the Roberts Cinema and was innocently standing there queuing up to see what time a particular film was being shown. I was quite happy to stand there. I was balancing on my crutch and balancing on the table, looking around and waiting for the other person to be seen to and to get sorted out so I could ask. But whilst I was standing there, a lady came up to me and she said, "Oh, do come and sit down." And she pointed to a very nice chair yards away from where we were, and I said, "But I don't want to sit down. I'm queuing up to find out when this film starts." "Oh, but you must sit down," she said. "No, really, I'm not going to fall. I just want to find out when this film starts." But anyway, I did find out. And unfortunately it didn't start when I wanted it to start, so I won't see it after all. I might as well have sat down. But anyway, another incident that took place, I was actually a support worker myself, and I was supporting a lady out into the big wide world, and we'd just been into Woolworths. I know it's closed down, and I don't think it's because of this incident, but you never know. Anyway, we went into Woolworths, and we were having a look round. Now, I must explain, this lady was 30 years old. And she had a few problems. I don't like labelling people and telling them what was wrong, but I can assure you she had a few problems. Anyway, somebody was giving out balloons, you know, like they do when they're trying to promote something. For some reason they like to give balloons out when they do that. Well, she had quite a few balloons in her hand, and there were those things with the helium inside, so when a child was holding the thing, they were going, you know, straight up in the air. And that's all right if they're 3 and 4 years old. It's all right if they're fastened to somebody's pushchair. And it's okay to do that, but come on, this lady is 30 years old and she's taller than I am. And I hadn't realised what was happening, because she never do, you know, one split second and there's a catastrophe occurred. But I came away from Woolworths and I was walking down the road a couple of yards, happened to turn round to her, and there she was, with a balloon in her hand. Now, when their adult is going to walk down the street with a helium balloon in the hand, I mean, you just don't do it, do you? Well, she was doing, because somebody hadn't realised that, okay, she was looking a bit confused, maybe a bit slow, maybe not quite so confident, so maybe she had some kind of learning disability. But was it a good idea to give her a balloon? So I would advise you to think when you're communicating with people, and for heaven's sake, don't give them a balloon, it doesn't look good.
Thank you, Linda. I think that Linda made a really good point about false assumptions as well, which is unfortunately something that can happen when we're afraid to communicate with someone, or if someone's afraid to communicate with us. And I think another example of perhaps where false assumptions can occur is if perhaps that initial effort hasn't been made to communicate with someone and they're sitting looking a bit upset or a bit, I don't know, grumpy perhaps, And the assumption that you make is that maybe they don't want to join in, or perhaps they're in a bad mood, or perhaps they're not interested in communicating, when in fact it could be that it's the lack of communication that's caused them to feel that upset in the first place. Just before we finish up here, I wanted to ask a question. In fact, a couple of questions. The first question is, I'd like to get a show of hands. Is there anyone here who has needed support at one point or another? Can I ask another question? Is there anyone here who's ever felt that perhaps they've exhibited challenging behavior? Challenging behavior. Has anyone shown challenging behavior? Because I think the reason I ask that question is I think probably if given enough time to sit and reflect, everyone in this room would probably raise their hands to both of those questions. Because the idea of support, it's not actually that complicated. It's very straightforward. And the truth of it is we support each other all the time, and this takes different forms. And challenging behavior, I asked that one because this is one of the fears I think that people can have, is that if they approach someone who's got complex needs, is they might have behavior that you're not sure how to deal with. And again, this is something that probably all of us have experienced, or perhaps even done ourselves at some point or another, where maybe you're upset about something, and because you're so upset about it, you don't have the ability to effectively communicate to who you need to communicate to what the problem is. I know, for example, myself, when I come home from work and there's a lot of washing up to do, my husband would definitely attest to the fact that I show challenging behavior. And he responds by supporting me. And that form of support is that he very kindly steps in and offers to help me with the washing up. So it's not rocket science. People with disabilities deserve to be valued as full and active members of the community. And this is something that Enable Scotland definitely believes, but also that I very fully believe deep in my heart, is that everyone has the right to be a part of their community, and not just to live in the community, but to be an active part of the community. And as we've already touched on quite a lot, with funding for projects being quite scarce at the moment, natural support is more important than ever. And I'd like to hand you over to Linda again to give you some useful tips on what sort of forms natural support might take.